Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about mass migration to Australia. Now, it's no secret that over the last couple of years or so, that all the Western countries, under the direct instructions and the orders from the globalists, have substantially ramped up mass migration. But any of those political parties seeking political office will say that they go, oh no, we're going to cut back on this mass. Oh, we're going to slow it down. Skilled people only, and da 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 da. And of course, the minute they get into office, they change that. Now, the recently elected about 16 months ago, Australian government, they said they were going to keep migration to Australia at somewhere around 150,000, give or take, per annum, per year, so which is still way too much. I mean, it's bear in mind, and I need to sort of state and restate this, of the only about between 3 and 5% of the mass migrants they bring into Australia, and I'm sure this is elsewhere in the West as well, only 3 to 5% have any sort of needed qualification and can speak competent English. Only 3 to 5%. So if there's 100,000, you're only getting, say 4,000 people that can actually plug straight into the economy and be productive. Get a job in an area that's supposedly short on skills and or needs skills quickly, I guess, is probably more to the point, and that speaks competent enough English where they can do the job. So and where there isn't a local person who can do the job. There's no good importing shitloads of people who have some sort of skill and simply replace the local workers. I mean, what's the point of that? But anyway, this is so the number of people coming into a skill is actually very small. But anyway, they were going to keep it around 150,000 or so. But instead, it's over 400,000 a year. In fact, there's about 3. Now, since this government's come into office, again, just on 15 months ago, the net migration, this is net, this is after you include people who've left, is now just on 500,000. So, 37,000 net migrants per month coming into the country since they took government. Now, on top of that, there's 2.5 million, wait for this, 2.5 million people here on temporary visas. I mean, I just want to give you the scale of this. 500,000 people arrived over the last 15 months. Only 16,000 or so of them are actually skilled. The rest are not. The rest are just parasites on the economy. And on top of that, there's 2.5 million temporary visa people. Now, just on the breakdown, the government tries very hard through various sort of statistical tricks and scams to try and hide the source of the people. They try and pretend that it's evenly balanced between skilled white immigrants and skilled non-white, which is utter and total bullshit. But anyway. So 90%, so this is according to the government information that this press released and regurgitated by the globalist controlled press. We've got a globalist controlled government putting out propaganda to a globalist controlled propaganda distributing media sector. I love that. 90% of these migrants, this is the mass migrants, 90% of these migrants self-report that they're fully proficient in English. Well, that means a lot. Gee whiz. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of so-called migrants that I come across where their English is so bad you don't even know what they're talking about, and they're clearly not skilled in English in any sort of functional way. I mean, they'd be maybe I don't know, first year kindergarten sort of level English at best. Now, and they hang out in migrant ghettos, so there's very little requirement really, as they see it, to learn English. They're employed by other people from their diaspora. They work in, the businesses owned by other people of their diaspora. They're given handouts by the white government and so on. Their children will speak English because they have to go through the school system. But they in the house they only speak the language of their diaspora. So, but 90% of the reporters being proficient in English. That's utter bullshit. Now, I'd think, well, mass migration, they're bringing all this skilled labor. Well, they're not, because half of the migrants, half of them are family reunion, chain migration, as it's called in the United States. So out of the 500,000, 250,000 are ostensibly skilled migrants, not even that much. And of those, again, maybe 20,000 are actually possess any skills that are useful at all. Now, where does the migrant? You have to actually look at their numbers because the government tries to bury this so that you can't really work it out. So they'll recount, then double count, then half count, switch it into different columns on a spreadsheet. So you really have to sit down and sort of hold on a minute. Let me have a look at this. Fortunately, having many years, being many years in business and everything, you can just about every statistical scam by the internal people's been used. So I'm sort of onto this, but India is by far away the biggest source of these mass migrants. Now, I'll say this again and again, but in terms of the Hindu nationalist Indians, which are mostly the ones that come here, the Hindu nationalists, you get a very small number of the Christian Indians. Not there's many of them. This is the Christian Indians are, say, a result of when the Portuguese and the French and so on arrived in India. They around Goa and that sort of thing. They ended up converting a number of the Indians there, and you see this with, say, people like Dinesh D'Souza in the US or so and so Fernandez and all that. So that's from that era, that hangout. But it's not very many of them, very few in fact. So the majority of them are Hindu, often rabid Hindu nationalists. Rabid Hindu nationalists who believe their culture is superior culturally and spiritually to anything in the West, but they're desperate to get the fuck out of India as quickly as they can and in big numbers. Remember, there's 2 billion people with a B, 2 billion people living in the fucking Indian subcontinent, and 3/4 of them are desperate to get the fuck out. Now they come to this evil fascist Nazi West with these massive chips on their shoulders, then create these, these ghettos where entire suburbs are nothing but Indians. They're not sprinkled out all over the place. Entire suburbs where there's nothing but Indians wherever you go. You go into a shopping centre there, and the shopping centres I've been to years previously, which was just a shopping centre. Now it looks like a fucking Indian bazaar and so on. And you get all this, and they will only do business with other Indians, and only with great reluctance will they do business outside of their diaspora. They'll only hire other Indians. They'll have a token, blonde white chick on the reception desk or something. With the rest of it's all Indians. They buy up businesses using offshore Indian finance, and again, all the white people are thrown out, and Indians are given the jobs. They've got these labour hire scams, bringing it out Indian peasants to work in takeout food shops. No taxes getting paid. They're putting people in accommodation at 12, 15 people plus to a fucking 1-bedroom apartment, which is like it is in India. So which is supposedly illegal, but the government turns a blind eye. And they're creating huge, I believe, changes in there. But also they're turning themselves to a nation within a nation, a bit like the Tamil Tigers were in fucking Sri Lanka. They viewed themselves effectively as a separate nation, and they wanted special allowances, dispensations, and special considerations for their unique, as they see it, their unique diaspora. So once they reach a certain sort of threshold, numerical threshold, they effectively demand and insist on a state within a state. And this is where we're heading in the West, not just in Australia, but also, I suspect, in Britain and elsewhere. And why you would bring these people over, these Hindu nationalists in such numbers, is fucking beyond my comprehension, because it can only go to a bad place. And yet the biggest source these migrants is from India. So and when you look at the migration from, you combine the entire subcontinent of migration to Australia, and by that I mean like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nepal, and the whole shebang. And you're looking at close than three quarters of the total migrant intake is from the Indian subcontinent. Not just Indians, but the others, as I say. And then you look at the second is China, and as in Chinese genetic diaspora, and then the third is the Philippines. And now they say that depending on which month, whatever, that migration from England is or Britain rather, is second or third. This is rather disingenuous because they're including in that a lot of brown and black people who are transiting, if you like, through through England or through Britain and then coming to Australia from there. So we're not talking first world white, fully qualified British people and so on, which you meet very few of. So and you meet some, but not very many. So, but the proportion of actual skilled migrants, remember, there's not many out of 100, every 100 skilled, out of every 100 mass migrants that come to Australia, maybe 3 or 4 of them are actually skilled and speak English. I mean, that's how small the actual skilled pool is, and the majority of those do come from other white countries. So the proportion of skilled migrants in the third world, which is what you'd expect, it's a dirt poor basket case fucking place. What do you think? Is skilled workers everywhere? Of course there isn't. So there's a very small proportion of skilled work. So maybe 1% of the people coming from the third world are skilled in any meaningful sense of the word. Now, we also need to look at the Western governments, again, under globalist, World Economic Forum orders and instructions, and you will do this. They're expanding the public service, very substantially expanding the public service, and or anything that relies on government money in any way. They're pushing them hard to get rid of all the white people and put Indians, particularly Indians, into those roles, but also other, like Filipinos or like Chinese, to put people in, to get rid of the white folks and put the brown people in those roles. Now, so this is a very artificial construct. So they're expanding the public service and creating jobs that don't actually exist, parasite jobs, and so thus they're effectively guaranteeing employment to these people. Now, before the affirmative action and this nonsense with expanding the public service to give jobs to migrants who aren't even needed in the first. So I mean, just look at this: migrants who aren't even needed in the first place are then being given jobs in the public service that aren't needed. I mean, for fuck's sake. So they come, so they create these jobs and give these jobs to these people, but on top of that, are replacing, kicking out white people to give these jobs. So the jobs are effectively being guaranteed to these Indians, but before, or migrants generally, but before this happened, before they started bringing out the race gender quotas, which was in the early 2000s, I think, is when I started to see. They had gender quotas a little bit earlier, but then the racial quotas started to come in, or being forced. There was talked about, or it was whispered in corridors, but it wasn't like a specific government policy to do this. They weren't running around accusing everyone of being a Nazi for not hiring black lesbians or something. So what they started, before they put these quotas in, race gender quotas in, the Indians and the other people had to compete on the basis of, did they have the skills, did they speak English well enough, or could they read and write English well enough? And even though we were assured in Australia by the government, which lied horribly to us, by the way, that the only people who come in would speak excellent English and would have first world level qualifications and certifications, so on, which they didn't. These people just couldn't compete. They just couldn't get jobs. I mean, they couldn't speak English. They didn't have qualifications to recognise. So there was a lot of complaints that people who were supposedly had triple PhDs were running around as cleaners or taxi drivers or something like that, which is the only jobs people of that qualification and expertise could get. So they had to bring out rules to effectively force employers to hire these people. And anyone that was getting any sort of government business or government contract was really told, hey, listen, if you want to keep doing business with the government, you've got to have 50% of your employees have to be black lesbians, so get to it. So businesses really had to start hiring people that weren't qualified and couldn't speak English and just kind of hope for the best. And in return, they were given government contracts with very minimal scrutiny, with minimal competitive requirement to meet quality and price and so on. So let me go on here about this. The government claims that 60%. I mean, what a lie that is! 60% of the migrants are skilled. But when you look at the list of what they claim as skilled, dishwasher and burger flipper and apple picker or fruit picker, they list these as skilled occupations, and and so by using that very low bar, they can claim 60% as skilled. The reality, of course, is vastly different. Again, if mass migration is so fucking good, why can't the government, any Western government, tell us why it's good? This is why it's good. This is what it achieves. This is it. Facts. But they can't, so they have to tell lie after lie after lie, which is, of course, what they're doing. When you look at the other short-term, these are short-term visa holders. This is like students and so on. Now, nearly 1 million of those, and over 2 million rather, nearly 1 million of those are Indian as well. Now, I know the Indians are driving a hard, but the Indian government's driving a hard bargain. They want to get rid of their surplus population, the Indian government, and they're desperate to get rid of their surplus population. And by the way, vast numbers of Indians and people from that subcontinent are desperate to get the fuck out of there as well. And so, but they want to bring all their corruption, their bad habits, everything that made their country a shithole, a basket case shithole, they want to bring to the West. And they will turn the West into a shithole. It's already happening. Now, I think in my view at least, the migration, skilled migration is fine. I mean, genuinely skilled. I don't mind. I've done business all over the world with every diaspora. I don't care. And genuinely skilled migration, but not migration that's as a pretext for bringing out your whole tribe or your whole fucking village where one person gets citizenship and next they're bringing out their fifth cousins and all that sort of stuff. That's all bullshit. And also with the Indians, and something that absolutely intrigues me about the Indians in particular, there's not many diasporas that are like this. You look at, say, Italians or Greeks or whatever that have been in Australia for 5-6 generations. This idea of that they're Italian would be, what are you talking about? They may give some sort of nod to Italian heritage in the distant past, but that's it. Now, you do get exceptions, by the way, but that's pretty much it. They integrate. Now, with the Indians, it's different. Even after 5 or 6, even 7 generations Western born, they still send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides. They still see themselves as Indian. They will only marry other Indians. They only want their kids to date and marry other Indians. Children that want to date someone outside of the Indian diaspora, they're threatened by the wider family that they'll be cut off and excommunicated. They'll be outcasts, never to be spoken to again, and on it goes. So their diaspora, they stay very tightly within their own genetic diaspora. Now, I don't necessarily mind that. If that's what they want to do, fine. But that doesn't make them good migrants. It doesn't make them good citizens. It doesn't make them good for the nation state they're in. They will ultimately, as again with the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, they will ultimately demand their own nation state within the nation, and they'll insist upon it. And that's hardly a recipe for harmonious relations. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.